to Vice President Kamala Harris from Washington, from John Cameron Weaver, Roseman, California. Today's date is still the 26th of April. Correction, April 25th, 2023. Really got to get these glasses checked. It is 3:23 Pacific Standard Time PM. Um, Dear Miss Vice President, or is it Madam Vice President? I missed you when you were back in office back in California. But this letter is addressed to you in all seriousness. Madam Vice President, we got to talk. I know this is going to be screened by all the appropriate departments. I hope so. And I hope this does not upset the Commander in Chief himself, President Joe Biden. Just one thing. Hello, Mr. President. I hope you're living long and prosper. A little track humor if you've actually been a Trekkie a long time ago, but this is getting serious here. I am concerned about the upcoming race for 2024. I know this may or may not be the time for you to consider this particular race, but I was hoping maybe you would consider the 2028. Madam Vice President, you have a little bit more political savvy at this point and a clearer head. The other GOP are coming up. Now, granted, I'd like to see President Biden back in office. He's got a hell of a lot of foreign experience. However, let's be honest. Even he's slipping a bit. He's trying. I know he's trying. And his heart is in the right. No, it's in the right place at this point. I'm also seeing the wolves salivating. I'm seeing the coyotes howling like crazy. And not just the Democratic Party. And also the GOP is sharpening up their proverbial verbal jabs, ready to go. I mean, they've already been ongoing for a hell of a long while. But this time, I'm sensing blood in the water. Metaphorically. If you're able, Madam Vice President, to do your constitutional duty and your job to the country, might this humble servant of California, who lives in California, who lives in, unfortunately, Speaker McCarthy's territory. Yeah, I'm sorry, too. The whole place is a damn cesspool out here in this district anyway. Long story on this one, Madam Vice President. If you actually had been crossing territories left and right, maybe you could have been stopping by our little neck of the woods and just see how backward we are out here. Out in Roseman, California. We're right next to Edwards. Be a nice quick trip over to the base and then doing a motorcade just to scare the living crap out of the people out here saying, oh my goodness, it's a Democrat. There's a lot stronger words to say concerning about us Democrats, my dear. Sorry. But what I'm trying to say is I still got concerns concerning about President Biden, whether or not he's actually going to be able to do the 24, and if he actually will win the 24. I know we need to keep positive about this, and I'd love to be positive about this thing, but I'm also hearing the uglies out there, and not just coming from the GOP and the Democrats, the independents as well. I'm not quite sure whether or not he's going to be able to do the job. And, Madam Vice President, if we actually did have a press secretary and a small staff trying to keep track of the progressive parties out there, not to mention the social media, of what they're saying, keep it in mind. They've got a hell of a following out there. YouTube, they're gathering. They're not quite sure whether or not if President Biden can actually do it this time or not. But they're not actually liking what the chances are anyway for them to win the prize. They're nervous. They are actually nervous about Trump and his ilk winning the coveted House again. This is no Harry Potter situation where we're trying to win the Tri-Cup Wizard thing. We're talking about the Oval Office and everything else. And that's the scariest damn thing. Now, I know you have a little bit more political savvy. You're getting a lot more experience in dealing with foreign matters and in the security details that you're learning about everything else around us happening here. I commend and congratulate you for being in the position that you are right now. But what I'm saying, and forgive me for being bluntly about this, Madam President, watch your ass. Things are not quite as safe as they are out here in California, politically speaking. We've already got enough issues right now as it is. We haven't had any political outbursts happening here, and social media is still probably going crazy. This is a strong Trump and McCarthy territory out here in Kern County. LA may be a little bit mixed at this point over here, but I'm not quite sure about the rest of the California either, where you came from. I'm hoping maybe you were keeping track of what's happening out here in your home state. As for all the political intrigue that we keep hearing, and yeah, I've been monitoring it for a hell of a long while, Madam Vice President. I've been keeping track of politics ever since I was a teenager. I'm a native. I don't suppose you ever remembered watching McLaughlin Group back in the 80s, or 70s to 80s. Ever seen This Week with David Brinkley, and then you'd switch over to the McLaughlin Group and listen to them. They made a hell of a lot more sense for being conservatives out there than the ones we got right now. They had a hell of a lot more intelligence. I I have to give some kudos to the conservatives out there. One of them was Bob Dole. He may have been staunch, but you got to give the guy credit and respect for that one. President Reagan, it's a different story altogether. But this one particular constituent still needed to reach out and make his voice concerned and make it known out there. A little background about my own situation out here, Madam Vice President. I run the channel of the Diary of the Graver Named John Weaver because this is me, all about me. I had dealt with a lot of personal situations, events that had turned me into a damn mental case. Not just a Trekkie, I've been a lifer since it came out on the air in '66. I'm as old as it, but that's not the concern. I've had a lot of medical situations in my life and mental health situations happen in my life that basically I still talk about on my channel a great deal. This is not telling the FBI and the Secret Service that I am a threat. No, for God's sakes, no. Why the hell should I do this? I talk about the one personal subject that's more intimate than anything else we know about. And, Madam Vice President, when you've lost people you cared about, that's my territory. That's my territory. Personal side note. I've been a lifer Democrat. My family had been a lifer Democrat, but we subscribed to the conservative stuff when we could. I want to show you something. We pay attention to the background, shifting a bit. My memorial. Normally, constituents try not to write about or videotape stuff like this, but I thought this might be of personal interest just a little bit. And the reasons why for my videotaping. The top shelf is where they reside. My mother and my brother, David Ward Shaw and Ellen Ray Shaw. But everybody called her Mary Ann all her life. Mama died 2013, Dave back in 2018. It's still hard to sell. One of the main reasons why I do my channel. Talking about them, talking about me, surviving left and right. I've been struggling. My brother had struggled all his life. Um, he didn't have the physical problems like I had when I was born. My brother was 8 years older than I was. He landed himself into the United States Navy back in '77 when they actually had the recruit training center out in San Diego. The story my brother told me, and I don't know. I hope to God this was legitimate because I still believed in that thing in the first place. First or second week of orientation into boot, my brother punched out the company commanding officer. Wired was his name. Every other company commander out there jumped on my brother instantly. There was a visiting SEAL commander that came to the training center and heard about it, and also heard stories from the other commanding officer, the lead one, which was, I think, Jefferson was the name. Jefferson was trying to convince my brother that he should stay in the Navy. He was also trying to convince the visiting commanding officer of the SEAL base what was going on. They made my brother a deal: dishonorable discharge or 3 phases of UDT, SEALs. My brother went for the SEALs and actually surpassed it. He went for more training at this point and became a SEAL. Unfortunately, there was issues happening in a ship that he was on a long time ago, which still hadn't been verified or even corroborated, but did disturb my brother throughout the decades. A lot of personal things happened to him, violations that he tried to report up the chain of command. I guess he got buried somewhere. And he had no choice on a couple occasions just to go UA on some occasions. But there was personal things happening in his life back home that made him take about a year off from the Navy without authorization. At the time, my mother and I had moved our little family from a town of Arleta to Granada Hills at the time, back in '79. We were already grieving the death of our great aunt that we'd taken care of for about 3 years at home. And now our grandmother had a stroke. She was visiting relatives out in San Diego. And my mother got the call from her brother out there. Drove all the way down to San Diego and transported Grandma back home. For 3.5 years, my mother and I were 24/7 caregivers, and I was a teenager at the time, going to high school, junior high through high school during that time. My brother had gotten the letters from Ma, and the Navy would him. Cross wouldn't help, and neither would the Salvation Army. He bumped it up to 6 on that one. Wouldn't touch it. He left for about a year. And during that time, we received a visit from our relative out in San Diego. Robert Morris. Cameron. We called him Uncle Bill. He was a state investigator for California. He had survived the Korean War. Never talked about it to anybody. My brother, he talked to. Yeah, it's kind of hard to talk about it because it usually brings up a lot of bad memories at this point. Uncle Bill told David to report to Long Beach Otherwise, next time he come up there and he saw my brother again, he was going to arrest him. He would have no choice. Arrest a nephew. My brother went back, did his time in the brig, got out on a bad conduct during that time. I think I still have a copy of his DD 214 over here. And for several decades, he had tried to appeal it with a lot of letters sent to the Navy, I think over to the California processing centers, either San Diego or San Francisco. But we never did hear back from him. And that was decade after decade after decade. He sent it almost every single year, trying to get his discharge upgraded. With a lot of letters and support that he actually had, sent copies with him. Unfortunately, during the last 10 years, my brother and I had severed setbacks where all that damn documentation disappeared. I still don't have any of the documentation, except maybe for a copy of his DD 214. And it still says other than honorable discharge on it. He was trying to appeal his discharge to general so he could have qualified for medical. He never did. He died without ever having it upgraded. But the thing I can tell you about it, when he served in the SEALs, it was the most... He took it not for granted, but he took it with pride. He served his country, and he served the Navy with pride and dignity and respect. Except for the things that he suffered through on one particular ship that's already been mothballed and turned into razor blades a long time ago. Coral Sea. I think his former commanding officer was Stanley Arthur. My brother had told me that he was part of a boat crew with Admiral McCraven when he was just a lieutenant, trying to qualify for the SEALs. Boat crew number 1. And my brother would tell me some stories about the training of it, including dealing with a log name of Old Misery, a huge-ass telephone pole that they would use as punishment. But really, it was basically good training for my brother because it was strengthening him up a bit. Admiral McCraven wouldn't remember my brother for anything. He wouldn't remember David Shaw. Probably not the tattoos on his arm. I mean, one, he had a cross on his arm, but he also had a Woody Woodpecker on it. At least on the opposite end, with a yin and yang. But he kept them covered up while he was in his BDUs during that time. There had been some people that kept calling him Woody too much. And my brother was here. He would probably keep telling me, don't say that to them. But this is the general letter going out to you, Madam Vice President. This is going on my regular channel, along with the other one, which I had before this one. I just wanted to share a story or two concerning about my family. My mother at one time was a bookkeeper, income tax specialist. She also had issues, not with the military, but she did have an adventure or two. Said before, my brother was born 8 years older than I was. Concerning about my own situation, that's why I kept doing the videos left and right. I said I had medical. I was born with a holy heart, literally. Mitral valves leaking. 1970, age 4 years old. Open heart surgery. Very dangerous for a 4-year-old to go through, especially when he keeps dying on him 3 times. He keeps coming back to life 3 times. No kidding. Cedars of Lebanon. Used to be out in Hollywood. No longer. Church of Scientology for decades now. I was not able to do the military. I wish I had, but I don't think my grades would have cut it anyway. I wanted to relay these things because I wanted to reach out. I keep talking about some of my experiences left and right on my channel because I wanted to tell people what it was like to live before really doing the grieving act left and right. And believe me, Madam Vice President, I've lost too many damn people. I'll do another video to explain more to people about what I've been going through, or else they can go through the archives left and right. The first portion of it was definitely aimed at you, but I wanted to give you background on who and what I was. I live out here in Roseman, California. Apartment complex it's on a drag strip called Roseman Boulevard. Yeah, I swear we have the ghost of Al Unser and Mario Andretti racing up and down these damn streets, especially when the people are trying to get to and from Edwards Air Force Base, all across town, left and right over here. I hope I've been convincing to you, and I'm hoping you'll be able to win the next term along with President Biden. Believe me, my mother and my brother and I had seen a lot of news stories growing up concerning about Senator Biden and his struggles in the Senate, and then being a vice president and now a president. I'll thank him for that one. And I thank you, Madam Vice President, for helping out California when you had, being a former district attorney and then everything else you did for California. And now for the country of the United States of America. I just hope that the lunatics still call themselves a grand old party, if there is anybody left, including those who have turned into insects. I hope that don't give you too much problems, ma'am. Okay, I guess that's it. I just bored the living crap out of you so much. Please feel free to contact me, or I really have one of the security staff or researchers to let me know what's going on. My brother's been dead since 2018. It's not the benefits I'm looking for. It's the acknowledgement that he was in the United States Navy and that he was a SEAL. I know there are hunters out there that will counteract what my brother had been dealing with and talking about to a lot of people that he knew. For me, he grew up with honor, and he's distinguished himself as much as he could, even choosing family over country when it was needed the most. I know we choose country over family, but Madam Vice President, and this is also addressed to President Biden, sir, family to me is everything. And when you lose it, sir, believe me, I know. I deal with it every single day of my life. As I said before, the main reasons why I do this channel. Thank you for your time, Mr. President, Madam Vice President.